is having a good day so far. And while I'm waiting for everyone to come in, I'm going to go and do attendance. Give me a second. Okay, so I'm going to run and do attendance. NSC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Everyone is here. Awesome. Whew. I'm just waiting for it to come up. Everything is slow in the afternoon. So I see Armand is here, Haley's here, Vanessa's here, Emma, Deandra, Braden, Gabby, Nick, Hannah, Sophia, Robin, and Ben. You're all here. Now, yesterday I told you today we're going to do a lab, but I'm going to do it from my perspective since all of you are home virtual. Anyone who was in the building today actually got to do it on their own. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to present my entire screen. So you're probably going to see me twice because one, I'm presenting, and then I'm also going to do it on my phone. I am going to turn off my camera on my Chromebook. And then I'm going to turn on my volume on my phone. So everyone be patient while I switch. And hopefully everyone should be hearing me now. Yes? And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be walking to where I have the lab set up. And the expectation is everyone should be taking notes based on what I am going to be doing in the lab. So I'm going to switch so you see the class instead. Oops. Started. And I'm also going to pin it. So give me a second. So I'm going to pin myself on my Chromebook because I've got to do that when I go. So everyone sees it as a presentation. And so now everyone should be able to see my screen. And what I had set up, okay, so if you see the entire classroom that I had set up when they were working on the lab today. So notice the first thing I have is a test tube holder, right? And what I'm going to put in there are two test tubes. Everyone sees that? In addition, I have 3 liquids. I have a blue solution. Right. Those of you can see it. A blue solution. And if you don't believe me, it's blue. Let me put it a paper, and then you can see that it's blue. And then I have two clear solutions. I expect everyone to be writing things down, and obviously I have the caption going so you can see what I am saying as I'm talking. Okay? So I expect everyone to be taking notes as if you were here in this class doing it yourself. Obviously, I'm going through the procedure, but you're just like if you were here in the building, you would be making the observations. And then we're going to discuss the writing up of this lab probably sometime next week, because it's going to take us today and tomorrow to finish this lab. Our first solution is a blue solution. And the name of this blue solution is called copper nitrate. And I'm typing it in the chat because sometimes I guess the voice doesn't exactly pick up, or the caption doesn't pick up the exact spelling of what I'm saying. We are in chapter 11. So yesterday we were talking about what a chemical reaction is. So you're going to get to experience it firsthand. And if this had been a normal school day, you would have already experienced this lab way back in October. But now is a good time. And so you still get some sense of normality, because even though you're not here, at least you get to see it and experience it firsthand. This second solution that is clear is a base. And the name of the base has the formula NaOH. And by now, since you've done chapter 9, you should be able to name this. And this is called sodium hydroxide. The third and last solution is an acid. And the acid has the formula HCl. And you should now know the name of this acid is called hydrochloric acid. Okay, so now you know the three solutions that we're going to be using. Oh, that hurts. Now, over here, we have a hot plate, and I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to fill up. I have a beaker with water, but I want it to be half full with water. So I'm going to top it up with more water. So it's about half to 3/4 fill. And then I'm going to heat it up because I wanted the water to be warm. or boiling by the time I reach to it. So I'm putting it on the hot plate. And so it's going to heat up. And while that's heating up, I'm going to do the first batch of my experiment. In addition, I need a glass rod and 3 disposable pipettes. So this is a glass rod. Okay, so we're going to use it for stirring. And we're going to have not 1, not 2, but 3 disposable pipette. Everyone sees? Yes? Awesome. So what is step 1? I'm going to take my blue solution. I'm going to open it up. Okay. And I'm going to squeeze it all the way I can. And normally I will hold the container, but I want you to see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to fill up and get 1 dropper full. So if you can see, right, you can see the blue solution into my dropper. And I'm going to put it into my first test tube. I'm then going to close my valve. Okay. So that there are no spilling, and so that's a safety thing. And you can now see my test tube with the blue solution. I'm going to contrast it so you all can nicely see it on the paper. And so everyone should be taking a moment to describe what this liquid look like. You notice it's a clear liquid because you can see through it, and it's a blue solution. Okay. We then going to take our base. So we're going to take our base, which is our NaOH. And we're going to get a dropper full of the base. And we're going to add it to our blue solution. Note what happened. Okay. I'm going to take my glass rod and stir, 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 right, until everything is nicely mixed. And I notice the color looks kind of like a greenish blue color, right? And that's not exactly the color I want. So I need to add another dropper full of base. So I'm going to add more base. And notice how the color got darker. So I'm going to really stir it so that everything is nicely mixed, and so all the way to the bottom. And when you look at it, it's a darker blue, almost like a royal blue in color, almost matching the color of my test tube holder. So I'm just going to make sure it's nicely homogeneously mixed, right? And then there you have it. Now that I have that, The next step, does anyone have any questions at this point? So we've done 2 steps so far. Step 1, we added the blue solution of copper nitrate in the first test tube. To the same test tube, we added 2 dropper full of sodium hydroxide. We then stir it, and what has formed was what we call a blue precipitate. So remember when we started chapter 11, we talked about what's a precipitate. Notice it's opaque and you no longer can see through it like we could if you compare it to the original solution, which means there is a solid that has crashed out of solution. And now you all understand what is a precipitate. Okay? So that's our first 2 steps. Our third step is going to take a little longer because my water is not hot enough yet. So we're going to wait and be a little patient. But here's this apparatus that is called a test tube holder. And so we're going to squeeze it and we're going to put it at the top of our test tube. And then we're going to move our hand back so we can hold it, so we can secure our test tube. And then we're going to move it over to our water bath. And then we're going to put it inside our water bath. Everyone can see? Yes? And so now I'm going to hold it at this end, right? And then while it's in the water bath, I'm going to stir, stir, stir until no further change. So because the water isn't as hot as I would always like it, but it's getting there, I'm going to stir, stir, stir. And for now, it looks like no change is occurring. And then I'm going to stir, stir again. And eventually, after a while, if you haven't begun to see it yet, the blue color is starting to change, right? And eventually, we're going to do it until no further change occurs. So if you were in the school building, this is what you would be doing on your own. So all of a sudden, it's going from a dark royal blue. It's now looking again like that aqua blue or sea blue, right? And notice it's starting to get and look kind of like a dirty greenish blue, which means something is going on inside my beaker. And notice it's getting greener and darker, right? So this is what you would normally been observing without me saying anything. But since you're not here, so hopefully everyone can see that the color is starting to change, right? So it's a darker green, but it's not done yet. And so we're going to keep going until no further change has occurred. So we're not quite there yet. So I'm still stirring. I'm stirring and I'm stirring and I'm stirring, building my wrist muscle, finger muscles, arm muscles, right? Aren't you guys lucky? Miss Smith is doing it for you. Okay? Can everyone still see? Okay. All right, so I'm still stirring because you don't want to have, notice the color is starting to change where it's looking kind of black or dark brown. So it went from a royal blue and it's almost now a dark brown, black color, but I can still see some hint of blue and green in it. So I keep going because the total reaction has not occurred. If you haven't figured out, we have now gone through 3 types of reaction. And when we go over this lab, we're going to discuss what is happening in the lab. So I'm going to keep stirring until everything is converted. And so we started out at the beginning with the synthesis type of reaction. When we started chapter 11, we said there were 5 types of reaction. And what we're doing here is actually going through and showing at least 3 of them. The one that's missing is combustion. Okay. And we're going to keep stirring, stirring, stirring until everything has been converted. And now you look and you see, right, that it is this dark brown color. And if I come back, I'm going to turn off my heater. And so if we come back and I use my contrast, right, you can see that it went from a royal blue to this dark brown, black color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it into my test tube holder and I'm going to allow it to cool. I turned off my Bunsen burner because I don't need it anymore. And so I'm going to wait a minute or so for it to cool. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, so Sophia said no. Everyone else is saying no. Now, I want it to cool because I want to show you this cool effect. Okay. And it's happening. But I'm going to take and show while it's cooling and show you what it looks like once it's totally cool. This is from this morning. And what you notice is the solid that was all the way through the liquid has settled to the bottom. And right on top of it is this clear liquid. And this clear liquid is what we call a supernathan. And the black solid is what is, or precipitate. So now you understand what it means when we use the term crashing out of solution and a precipitate is formed, because at the start, there was no solid in the original solution. But now look, in our step 3, after heating, it has changed into something else. And so the liquid at the top is called a supernatant. While settling to the bottom, the solid, the dark brown, or in other words, the black solid, is what we now know, and now you know, is a precipitate. And so now you know that a precipitate is a solid that crashes out of solution and when a chemical reaction is occurring, and therefore it is a new formation of a compound. Okay? Now, notice we got the same thing. So you see how it's settling out where the solid is going to the bottom and we have the liquid at the top. And we're going to discuss when we go over this lab what that clear liquid is and what that black or dark brown solid is as we go over this lab. Okay? And so now everyone knows that we have now completed 3 out of 5 steps. I'm going to let it cool for another minute, and then we're going to add our last liquid, which is our acid, which is our HCl acid. And then we're going to discuss either Friday, starting Friday into next week, where is this application in terms of chapter 11 and what it means, because we start in chapter 11 to talk about chemical reaction. And so I told you it's like cooking where something plus something gives us something. And so we're going to talk about on Friday what, and you're going to answer this question, what is happening for you to determine that a chemical reaction is occurring? Okay. Or in other words, how do we know a chemical change is occurring, which is occurring in part of a result of a chemical reaction? I think we're where we need to be for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restir it back up. So everything is homogeneous. So we'll get back everything back into one phase, because before it was in 2 phases, right? And now to the same test tube, I'm going to add the acid, hydrochloric acid, right? And I'm going to add 2 dropper full right off the bat. But normally we'll add acid until no further change is occurring. But I'm going to add 2 dropper full of acid, right? You can see me adding. There is a liquid in there. And then I'm going to close back up my container to be on the safe side. And now I'm going to stir, stir, stir. And as I'm stirring, notice that dark brown solution is starting to dissolve and disappear. Okay. So I'm going to keep stirring. And so this is a patient thing. I'm going to stir, stir, stir. So I push it down because I saw that my test tube was coming down. So I was being a little bit more safe. Added. And I see it's taking longer than I want it to, so I'm going to add some more acid. So adding another dropper full. And hopefully it will quickly all react. So we can see the final reaction. And now you see it starting to dissolve some more. Keep spinning until all, and stirring until everything is all gone and there's no further change. So we're almost there. And when we look, we see there's this sea green solution, very pretty green. Everyone liked the sea green color, right? And so it's like a sea blue green, aqua, right? Color. Can everyone hear me? Okay. And so we have this pretty sea green color, which means our precipitate dissolve and change again into something different. Now, if we felt the container, it feels warm, which is why we had to make sure it cooled first, because we wanted to make sure if we feel it, we could feel that the test tube, as we were adding and changing, became hot, which means some form of heat was being given off. I am going to end the lab. We have 2 more steps to do. And we're going to do those 2 steps tomorrow because I don't want to rush it. And there's nothing like seeing the end result. And pretty much we'll pick up the rest. I could have ended it and put step 4 today, but I think we'll do it tomorrow. So let's go review what we did. We took one of the test tube and we added a dropper full of a blue solution of copper nitrate. To that blue solution and clear solution of copper nitrate, and by the way, you now know what a solution is. A solution is a liquid that has some solid dissolved in water, and when it's dissolved, you don't see the solid and it's nice and clear. So this blue solution, remember that term we defined at the beginning of chapter 11 that says aqueous? Copper nitrate is an example of an aqueous solution. It means solid copper nitrate is dissolved in water, and when it dissolves in water, it forms this nice blue solution. We then took a dropper full of that nice blue solution, and we added a dropper full of a base, which is originally clear. And when we add the base of sodium hydroxide, we notice that a precipitate crashed out of solution. It is a dark blue precipitate, or if you want to call it a royal blue precipitate. And that means that copper nitrate was changed into something. And we're going to discuss when we go over later on Friday or next week what that change in copper nitrate was. We then put that dark blue, after we stirred to make sure it was homogeneous, that dark blue precipitate in the test tube into a water bath. And we, with continuous stirring, We watch as the heat changed that dark blue precipitate into a dark brown or black precipitate. So it's still a solid, which means that solid is not soluble in water, which is why it's crashing out and we see that solid as a precipitate. We then allowed it to cool, and when it cooled, we saw our solid settle to the bottom of the test tube. That let us know that the solid is dark brown or black solid, which is our precipitate. And on top is a liquid that is clear. And just because it's clear doesn't mean it's water, by the way, but it's something that's a liquid that's clear. And we call this liquid, when it separates into a solid and on top is a liquid, we call that liquid a supernatant. We then use our glass rod to remix our black precipitate with our supernatant. And then we added acid, and we keep adding acid in excess until the dark brown black precipitate dissolved dissolve into whatever the liquid that the dark brown precipitate changed into and became a sea green or aqua clear solution, which means whatever the solid that was formed from the dark brown to black precipitate was soluble in water, and therefore a clear solution was formed. Everyone with me? Great, because tomorrow we'll go on to the last step in this reaction, and then to go on to what we're going to do in the second test tube. Are there any questions? Okay, so I'm going to put this up on the side so we can pick up this experiment tomorrow. And so you guys were able to visually view your first lab for the year, especially now that we're back in the building. And hopefully, if you guys are ever back in the building, maybe you will be able to complete a lab. But this is what chemistry was supposed to be like. So hopefully, even though you didn't get the full view, the last marking period, you're going to get an idea of what it could have been like. And hopefully you have enjoyed, even virtually, indirectly, doing the lab. And then on Friday, we're going to discuss this lab, which you are going to have to write up. All right, so I'm going to move back to my desk. I'm going to wash my hands. Normally, there are safety precautions where we wear safety glasses. So if you notice, for the students, there was a safety glasses. They had to wash it and disinfect. And if you notice, all the other labs were set up for them in the classroom for their stations so they could do the lab, each person. And so they wore their safety glasses. And then they labeled so we could come back and complete the lab tomorrow. All right, so let me go back. Let me wash my hands. So I'm going to mute myself. And so now you can see their version of what they did. and each of them at different stages. This is us, right? And so we will finish. It looks like it's about to rain outside. And now we're going to move back